Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us today for the final presentation by our Field Ready Dream Team. My name is Magenta Strongheart. I'm head of design and partnerships at SupplyFrame's Design Lab. Our parent company is SupplyFrame, and that's also part of the Hackaday family, of course. This year for the Hackaday Prize, we did something totally new, and we started really excited to be catching up with the Field Ready Dream Team and see their progress since our initial concept review just a couple months ago. Of course, none of this would be possible without the incredible support of our sponsors, SupplyFrame, DigiKey, Microchip, and ARM. So huge thank you to them for their continued support and supporting the open source technology hardware movement for the last few years. We're so excited what we've been able to develop through this program and through the Hackaday Prize over the last 7 years. We're really looking forward to moving these solutions forward with our nonprofit partner. So without further ado, I'll pass it off to Giovanni, Design Lab's product development engineer, to introduce our challenge today and our panelists that we have on the call.
Thank you, Magenta, and hello, everyone. And well, thank you to our Field Ready panelists for being here today. Andrew Lamb, Global Innovation Lead, and Catherine Hepson, Engineer. Thank you so much for being here. And well, we're here today for the final presentation of the Field Ready Dream Team Challenge. This team includes Misha, Antonio, and Tom. Hello, team, and thank you so much for your dedication. Well, just as I said yesterday, designing a product in the middle of a pandemic and thousands of miles away from each other requires a special level of commitment and talent. In the last couple months, there were transcontinental 17-hour-long flights in a hazmat suit. There were floods, there were earthquakes involved, and you persevered. So it's fantastic. It's really fantastic. And well, one of the things that I liked the most about your work is how this team had an immediate ability to spot the challenge, narrow it, and quickly learn from your research. There were a lot of really ingenious ideas that that were tested, before making any decisions. So thank you again, guys. It's been a fantastic journey. So I'm very excited to pass the microphone to the team. The floor is yours, Field Ready Dream Team.
This has been a very tough challenge for us, and we have learned a lot from you, from your amazing organization. At first, it was very, very difficult to know in which part of your work we should be looking more, like finding these hot spots. It was very, very difficult. But in the transcourse of the time, we found our mission. We learned by the content is in the internet, but mostly from the Field Ready staff, and all the team was very helpful with us, and so that's how we managed to get to this mission. And it's very clear. It stems for what should we do to evaluate and improve our product quality. Yeah, that was the center of all of the development, and we managed to get you on a very, very long interview process. I am very, very grateful to all of the people that respond positively and managed to give you some of their time to answer our questions. And the overall answer to many questions was it depends. That was one of the very, very persistent answers in the Field-Ready. And so we took some time to chat with you, to know the human factor. We knew this just wasn't about the product itself, but about the organization, the how people communicate, how they interact with information, with the objects, with the manufacturing process, with the local manufacturers, and with the end users. So we identify the workflow, and the implicit and explicit workflow of Field-Ready. And we talked about this before, and we find the goals or the objectives of the development. Can we please go next? Yeah. So after the extensive research, we knew we needed to make something very simple. Not just in terms of technical simplicity, but usability, because we wanted this to be easy to transition. Also to make it flexible, because that it depends means like you have very, very different topologies in your workflow, and the criteria change over the needs, and these needs change depending in the different situations you face in all the different locations, which every location has a different context. And so we knew we needed to make something very, very flexible and also very affordable, because we know some of these locations are in very isolated or difficult places that probably if we were like looking to develop something that product should be like considering that probably it will take weeks to acquire some supply or some replacement part or something like that. And also that in some locations, the internet is not as good as in other. So we wanted to make something also something portable. We know you are working sometimes in very difficult situations, and speaking about the rapid response scenarios, we know on these circumstances you need to wait a certain amount of hours before take actions, but we still know you need something portable and fast to use, and on top of that, something reliable. And that's the result from the research, from about 15 hours of conversations with 10 or 12 different locations. And thank you for your time again.
Thank you. First of all, an internal solution, and one is more like a customer facing or customer service feedback support. The reason why we did that was because Field-Ready Challenge contains two main components. One was the internal things, which is documentation, tracking, and quality control, which is the internal solution. And the other was the feedback from end users. How can they contact Field-Ready? Or what are some ways they could get in touch if they need to report any product repair or recovery issues? So first I'm going to discuss about the product and the customer support service, and then I will jump into the internal solution. First of all, to identify that the product is from Field-Ready, we designed a labeling solution and had two parts to it. So the first part is product labels, and these would basically help end users know that this product they're getting is from Field-Ready, along with the contact details of Field-Ready, which could either be an email or phone number or even a WhatsApp number. through which the user can directly send the text to them. And this image basically shows field ready with like a unique ID code. So if they need to like fill a form with the unique ID code, they can do that, and field ready would straight know that, okay, this is the batch number, and this is the user, and this is the location, and this is the product which we need to repair. Before we jumped into any of the solutions, we had a huge time exploring different ideas for product labels. One of those was, as we mentioned in our initial concept, making labels out of recycled aluminum cans or aluminum sheets. So what we did was we used local tools, aluminum sheet, cut it into a thin strip, used letter punchers, and then hammered those into the label. But as you can see, that label is not that human readable. And also, in case we used methods like dot peen engraving, those are very expensive. And we wanted to come up with a cost-effective solution while having the labels provide all the information and being readable. Hence, we went through an entire, we did a brainstorming and came up with a lot of solutions. If we go on the next slide. So these are more like a diverse set of labeling solutions we came up with for product labels, considering that Field Ready makes more than 100 products, and one labeling solution cannot suffice for that. So we thought, why don't we include their pre-existing labeling solutions, such as spray painted labels, along with including maybe some things which can be incorporated inside the manufacturing process, or even getting embossed labels or industrial labels, so that these are small tools which can be taken to the rapid response scenarios, and the label can just be printed there and put on the package. So this is kind of a flowchart we made, and I would like to give an example and then demonstrate what we're trying to say here. So for instance, we take the latrine system. Is the product single use? No, it's going to be used by a lot of people. Is that product for indoor use? No, because it's going to be outdoor, it's open to the public. Is that product laser cut? No. And how large is the product? And the latrine system is big, so maybe we can use the spray painted labels. On another hand, for instance, we had something like umbilical cord clamp. Then is that product single use? Yes, and then we can use shipping labels for those. The idea behind this is that when you have such a diverse set of solutions, you want to know specific scenarios where you can use either of these options. So for instance, if you're using industrial or embossed labels, those machines Field Ready manufacturers can carry with themselves to rapid response areas and just print the label there and attach it to the product. Whereas if it's a very small product and we know it's going to only have a single use, then we can just put the label on the package, for which we can use shipping labels. Or for long-term use, we can incorporate the labels in the manufacturing process, like laser cutting and laser engraving the label. Along with designing and coming up with all these ideas, we thought we should also make some product labeling guidelines. So for the first, the label would include product name and part number, Field Ready logo, along with some contact information. And then these can be, as I said, created during the manufacturing process, which makes it easier, and you can just attach the label after you're done manufacturing the product. And in rapid response areas, they can either use embossed or industrial labels, which they can carry with them on site. Now, the part is about getting feedback from the end user. The purpose of including the Field Ready logo and contact information and the unique ID batch number is so that the end user can contact Field Ready. And these can be done through either a unified channel such as Twilio or Zendesk, or they could also just WhatsApp message or call Field Ready and report something about the product that's bothering them or they need help with. Now I would switch to talking about the internal solution, which has to deal more with documentation, tracking, and quality control. For that, we came up with shipping labels. And these would just go on the package and would be really fast and affordable to print, because we'll just use printers for those, include a QR code on that for the ease of scanning, and very important information like order number, batch number, customer location. All of those things would go on the label, so that when the user sees it, they can already get all the important information they need to contact Field Ready. And lastly, this labeling would be integrated with the FieldTrack app, which Tom will talk about later. To come up with the printer, we also did a lot of research and came up with the list of printers we would like to compare, which we would include in the document we submit later. But there were a lot of parameters we considered while searching for these printers. First being, it should be a cost-effective system. We don't want to have like an expensive budget and then buy that. So it should be cost-effective while serving the purpose and while serving both long-term and rapid response scenarios. Second is availability of materials. Field Ready has a lot of locations, and we want to make sure whichever printer we recommend, it is accessible in all those locations, and the parts it would need, be it software, hardware, or manual tools. Third is support generic label paper. We all know when it's like a specific label paper that a printer needs, it can be very frustrating, considering that there are so many locations where these labels will be made, where these products will be manufactured. So when a printer supports generic label paper, it makes life really much easier and the process faster. The next is portable and compact printer. And this is basically aiming at rapid response scenarios so that manufacturers can actually carry that with them on site and make shipping labels through that. And then there's the point of long-lasting product. Anything we want to recommend, we want that there's longevity attached to it. And so that this serves for a long time for Field Ready, and also we can get a good feedback on how it's working for them. And lastly, it's the label size. If it's a product label, then maybe a thin strip or something like that could work. Whereas a shipping label, you might want a bigger size, like a 4x6 or more than that, depending on how big the package is or how small the package is. So we tried choosing printers which had that flexibility of having different sizes compatible to them.
We have one part of the development focus and with focus on the documentation process. And we have learned about this difficulty in the documentation process. So we wanted to plan this challenge of how can we make this more interactive, engaging, and also suitable for the different contexts you have. And so again, there was something quick, motivating, open to all the different configurations. Also, as Mishan mentioned, this labeling is very, very, very important. And also, we need to make use of this labeling not only for human readability, but also for machine readability. And also, other of the challenges, was to make this serverless and offline. This is a tool, and you need to think about this like make walls with these Lego bricks. So the idea was how can we track the manufacturing process? And how can we relate the different parts of the processes in a single document, and how to make this writing very, very quick and engaging. So we made this design of the labels with the QR code, and the QR code is not only just a link or HTTP link. It holds data, and this data is formatted in JSON. So we also make use of these document-oriented databases. And the idea is to label all the different equipment, tools, or machines and materials, and then scan it and form this document by scanning. This is an example of the label, follows the design principle of Misha, which is the solution we have found. Can we go for the next slide, please? So basically, this tool it has two parts. The first part is the label maker, and you can make these labels in the app. And the writing process is really, really quick and flexible. you can choose the structure or the data that is going to be held in the label. So some of you will want the label to be very detailed, or others will want just to hold very basic information. It's up to you how much detail you want to add to the label. The product of this app is an image, which is the label. And you can share this image in every messagery service or platform, just to be flexible to manage your own data as you want. And then the process is make the label, print it, and place it in the machines or and other parts of the process. And I print these labels as example, and I place it in my 3D printer, in my PLA spool, and I made this to hold, and that's like my sign ID, which is for the validation process. And the second part of the app is the scanning process. So the scanning process is very simple. You have this interface where you are making these ensembles. And as you need to add machines or materials to the process, you just go, approach to the label, identify the label, scan the QR, and what you are doing there is grab the JSON codes and add it to the document database, which is the assembly. And this assembly describes your process. And every time you scan these codes, you add a timestamp and a hash, which are the principles for blockchain. And this is to validate or have a trusting mechanism for this document. Like using blockchain for this will give you the like you have a system that needs to be authorized to be modified later. So yeah, this is the principle of this. And the idea is to have, as a product of this, open digital QC standard document. There is actually some standard documents in different industries or services. There is some open contracts and that are digital documents that are signed for some person, and it gives you information that can't be edited. So it is encrypted with the same sign. And the idea is to democratize quality control with this tool to make it affordable to small businesses, and not just for I think this will be very useful for free, but as Andrew mentioned before, think big. I think this can be useful also for other small businesses that work or have similar work. Thank you. I will pass the word to Tom.
Thanks, Tonio. So I'm just going to wrap up now by presenting a complementary app. We didn't quite have time to integrate the two, my work and Tonio's work, but I hope that in your minds you can see how they would work really well together. So I'm going to start with a video. I think you got a sense of the beginning of the process from the video, but it would continue in the same way. After the manufacturer had scanned the batch, you know, they'd pass it on to someone to perform quality control, who'd be able to use their own phone, which would be logged in with a different account, their own account, to scan the batch through quality control. And in fact, we worked closely with Field Ready's engineers to kind of identify 6 key points in the process of a batch going through, you know, all the way from ordering, manufacturing, quality control, shipping, delivery, and then actually several weeks or maybe months later, a follow-up process. So at each of these stages, you can log that a batch has passed through that sort of gateway, and that's all stored on Airtable. So the key features are that it supports tracking of the full order process. The app is currently fully functional on iOS, including user logins, which work through Airtable as well, and QR code scanning. When you submit a tracking item, you're able to add your current location as well as any optional comments. So what that allows is, for example, if one item fails quality control, you can make a note of that in the comments. In addition, you can see exactly where the product has been, for example, when it was dispatched or delivered, to make sure that it arrived at the right place. It's integrated with Airtable, which is a tool which you're already using. And I feel the flexibility there is that it's possible to always kind of dive in and peer at what's going on behind the scenes. So if anything goes awry, you can do that. Also, it's really easy to create reports and analyze statistics from the database because it's all very human readable and friendly. Furthermore, the tool supports flexible batch sizes. For some products, it might make sense to have a batch of, say, you know, a batch size of 1 if you're making 1 product a day or a couple of products a day, you know, for latrines, which each one is going to a different village potentially. You could have a batch size of 1 and each one would be individually trackable. But for some products, like for example, the face masks in the video, it might not be necessary to have individual traceability for every single item. And it could be instead be done on a larger batch size. So for example, 5 or 10 or even 100. That's completely customizable. The app is fully designed with modern iOS tools, which means that actually the interface scales to fit really small phones and the sort of from 5 years ago, as well as the larger phones from today, which means that you don't necessarily have to have the latest and greatest to use it. I also did a lot of usability testing with random people who hadn't encountered the app before to see if they were able to decipher, understand the different features. And as a basis of that testing, ended up kind of modifying things. So for example, on the left here, you can see that when you open the app for the first time, you're invited to scan a QR code. So you get taught what this button means, but in a sort of non-invasive way. And you're kind of subtly hinted that you're able to tap on each of the rows to reveal more information by this little arrow here, for example. Those are all things which came about after a fair amount of prototyping and testing. Beyond that, I'd like to talk a little bit about how the app integrates with Airtable. So within Airtable, as you saw, you can actually generate QR codes. That's a custom script which I wrote. It pulls them in based on the batch ID in that particular row and stores them in an image field within Airtable. Then using the Airtable page designer, I was able to produce a label which automatically updates and stays synchronized to whichever row you select. So that means that when you're printing out the label, there's no chance of having the batch ID misaligned with the QR code or the product name. It'll always be fully synchronous because it's automatically generated. And then beyond that, all the tracking data is also stored within Airtable. If you want a quick glance at the innards, here's what the latest sort of schema for the Airtable database looks like. So traditionally, Field Ready has Airtable database has this product table, which links to other tables, for example, like inspection reports and such like. but we built upon this by adding these 5 tables. So you start with an order, and an order is comprised of sort of multiple batches. And each of these batches refers to a product, as well as having its own tracking events. Each tracking event corresponds to a maker. So that means, for example, I can tell Misha quality controlled this process, Andrew delivered it, etc. Furthermore, because each batch is related to a product rather than each order being related to a product, you're able to have one order with multiple products. So for example, if a customer orders 100 face shields and 100 face masks, you'd still be able to process that within the system as a single order. Yeah, so now I just want to wrap up by talking about what we are handing over to you guys now and over the next week. So very shortly, early next week, we'll be delivering you a report, giving a full sort of summary of our work, our insights, our labeling designs, guidelines, recommendations, more in-depth version of what you've seen over the last 20 minutes, as well as our suggestions on how to roll this out and scripts and code. We'll also be handing over the full iOS source code and the Android source code, as well as the updated Airtable database, which I was just describing. Very briefly, we wanted to kind of note the costs. And when looking at these, I think it's important to note that there's a certain flexibility to the solution that allows actually a kind of I call it a graceful degradation. So, if you don't have a $200 label printer available, maybe it's broken down, or maybe you just never had one, or you're just manufacturing 1 or 2 products, you can just use a standard inkjet printer. And failing that, you could even handwrite these labels and just manually enter the batch number into the app when you scan it. And so these prices, they depend on the kind of setup that you're going to have. And then we just wanted to also touch on some of the organizational shifts that we think would be related to deploying something like this. I think we presented and talked a lot about technology over the last 25 minutes, but I think it's important to note that it's not technology. It's not just technology. In fact, it's probably more about the human factor than it is about technology. And so I think it's really important to build a culture around documentation and around quality control, which is supported by technology, but is not replaced by technology. And I think it's also important that there's a dedicated role for overseeing documentation and quality control. Yeah, next steps. I think the prototypes are in good shape, but I think they could still need a little bit of love. And then I think once they're ready to roll, I think it's worth deploying this solution progressively. So starting, for example, with a single region and maybe even a single product, deploying the solution, building that culture of quality control that we were talking about, and gathering feedback, iterating, and because there will be things which go wrong, there will be design mistakes that we've done, and resolving those issues before deploying further. Cool. Thank you so much to well, everyone in this call, but also to all of the Field Ready staff who we were able to interact with, to interview, to steal their valuable working hours to make our work more meaningful. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Misha, Tom, and Antonio, for such a comprehensive presentation. I think it's really valuable for not only us here on the call, but our broader Hackaday community and anyone who's watching to see really everything that went into each of these design decisions and how much goes into that process in developing something like this. Even I mean, it's incredible that you were able to accomplish so much in a 2-month sprint. But I think that for other people to be able to see, it does take a lot of time and iteration to get to these points, and to develop such an adaptable solution, I think is really awesome. So I'm excited to turn it over to our panelists and hear some more feedback from them. Thank you guys for the wonderful presentation.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation, everyone. And I wasn't quite sure when we embarked on this Hackaday Prize journey that what we were going to get out of it, because I think the brief we gave you was actually really rather esoteric and you know, sort of rather big thinking and so on. You have knocked us out of the park. I thank you very much indeed. I feel like my first question is, when is it available? Can I start using it? I want to get my hands on it, and I want to start, you know, sharing it, you know, with the team on Monday. Like, here we go, kind of. So I think you've absolutely hit the sweet spot of something that we can be very adaptable, the different types of labeling methods. Thank you very much for your work on that and being sensitive to some of that. I know sometimes it can be difficult to face some of those constraints. I think the sort of two sides of the same, what I regard as being the same app, are really, really very powerful for us, and the fact that you've integrated it so well with our existing systems, you know, and ways of working, and actually, if I may say so, presented it to us brilliantly. Tonio, your screenshots, you know, that sort of where you had all of your side by side there, and then Tom, the video that you shared with us there as well, it makes it really, you've made what seems like you know, would have been quite a lot of complex work. You've communicated it really clearly, so thank you very much, and that will help with adoption, not just in our organization, but in the partner organizations that we work with that also make the aid supplies. There's so, you know, badly needed in many parts of the world. I like the sort of Tonio, at the start, you sort of there's a sort of truth in one of the points that you recognized about the world that we operate in, which is like, when you were asking questions of our team, the answer was often like, it depends. And you've created a system which I think will allow us to sort of not only kind of think about when, you know, the best tool for the job, but to be really adaptable on that. So thank you for that. And I'm really glad you were able to engage with our teams around the world, actually, that there was a chance for you to speak to some of them, because there's some amazing people. You've probably, you know, gotten a sense of the range of crises that the world is facing right now, and then COVID on top of that as well. And actually, there's a fairly urgent need for people with your sorts of skills and the engineers that are brought together by platforms like Hackaday to support this kind of work. So I'm glad that you've had that opportunity to engage with them, and you know, and if I may say so, I'd like to try and work to make sure that we keep in touch with you, and you know, don't go making too many career plans too quickly. You know, we may need some help rolling this stuff out around the world. So I'm really glad that, I mean, that the Hackaday Prize has been decided to have this open source approach, because, you know, I'm sat there watching the presentation today. You know, I'm thinking about our partners that, you know, small startups in Kathmandu that could make use of this solution that you've developed. I'm thinking about the latrines manufacturers in Vanuatu, the hand washing station manufacturers in Vanuatu that could make use of this. The, you know, almost sort of medical device, almost like repair teams that are working across Syria, and the partners that we work with there in the hospitals that can, you know, this solution could help with. And I think that's one of the values of this being, of your work here being open, that we can share that further. So I'm glad you've operated in that spirit, and the Hackaday Prize is in that spirit very much as well. You know, there was a number of questions I was going to ask you, that came up in the presentation, and then almost like in the next slide or in the next part of the presentation, it's like, oh yeah, there's the answer. Okay, they thought of that too. So I don't have a great deal on the technology side to ask you. I'm very grateful for doing such a thorough job of it, and you know, it just looks really amazing. I like the idea of, I like the idea that perhaps it's resonated with you as well, the idea of democratizing quality control. Like, we don't necessarily, we think of the Fab Lab movement or the Makerspace movement or the Maker movement or the Hackerspace movement, or you know, what we're doing with these new sorts of technologies and these, you know, might be described as citizen supply chain type approaches, as a democratization of the means of production, of manufacturing, of being able to create your own products. And that's really important. People who create are happier than people who consume. But we have to make sure that we do have that quality in there, because otherwise it would just become a race to the bottom, to sell the cheapest thing as quickly as possible and all of that. So I think the idea of democratizing quality control, and the way that, you know, we can be accountable as engineers for our work, and as designers and as creators for our work, to the people that use them. And you know, that's, you know, that broad idea, I think, that is perhaps quite esoteric at the start of the project, has really shone through in your presentation today. So thank you very much for being true to that spirit as well. Kat, were there questions that you wanted to, you know, as one of our engineers, and you imagine yourself using this sort of thing in the field, is there anything you wanted to say in response to the team? You've been working with them very closely.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to say great work. I'm very impressed. Andrew said it too, but the prompt we gave you was huge, just a massive problem. We really didn't do any favors. We didn't really define it very clearly for you. And you did a great job of defining it for yourselves and really narrowing it down. And I was impressed that through your process, because as Andrew said, I did get to work pretty closely with you. You were comfortable sitting in the we don't really know what this is all about space until kind of you gathered enough research and answers started to appear. So I really like that. What you produced was wonderful, but also the process you guys went through, I was very impressed with, and I think it's what allowed you to get to a good solution. I have a lot of questions, but I think most of the questions just need to be answered by this being tested. Like, I think you've done a really great job at the kind of first prototype, what you can do from kind of like desktop development and research and kind of like remote research. And now it's time, so to speak, to like take this into the lab, though not a lab, just like take this into one of our field locations and try to get it adopted, because I'm sure there's going to be a million snafus and questions and barriers that none of us have thought of or couldn't even begin to predict, but they're not going to become apparent until we're testing. So I was taking some notes. I'll see. Well, another just piece of feedback rather than a question is I really liked how cleanly you distilled the like what needs to happen in order for this to work, and the fact that you were like, this is about quality control is really about humans, and also the very tangible field ready needs a person whose like dedicated job it is to think about quality control from a global perspective, which is something we don't have right now. And I think you're 100% right that for your system to be successful, or really for just our growing organization, quality control and accountability to be successful is like, it's a full-time job, definitely. And so thank you for that part of your presentation too. I think just another underline of kind of how comprehensively you attacked this problem. Oh, two things I'd love to see in the final report that I think weren't addressed super intensely here, which is completely fine because I don't think they need to be in a final presentation. But I would love to see a very concrete kind of outline of the problem statement. I think for your presentation, it was very good in general. In the report, I'd like to see, I mean, you guys took a deep dive as third-party observers into Field Ready's quality control system. And because we've grown so much so recently, there are definitely shortcomings there. And I think adoption will also be, like, if you make that what we're doing is not good enough, then it's like, why put in the extra work to learn something new and change my habits and take an extra 10, 20, 30 minutes here and there to make it happen? So roast us, you know, like go crazy in that report if you'd like. And I'd love to see a little bit in terms of what you think training for this would need to look like. Like, is the idea to train one person in each location and have them train, or develop some sort of online training? And that's a whole task, training for a digital system. So not at all expecting you to develop the training systems, but would love in your report to see just like a little sketch of what you think that might need to look like. Yeah, I'm sorry. I also had a lot of questions that you answered before the end of the presentation. So I guess good work for you. But I really just had more feedback than concrete questions.
Thanks, Catherine. Yeah, so we're really excited to take this further now. And we would like to look, you know, for your assistance, the three of you, in helping us roll this out at Field Ready. As Catherine has indicated, we would look to deploy this in one location. I know, Misha, particularly, you've been doing a lot of prototyping over the labeling itself, and so perhaps bringing you in to work with some of the teams to see what approaches will work, like which team we want to work with first based on the technology that they have available in the field. And then, and you know, just to be practical about it, perhaps a team that is in a reasonably straightforward time zone for you to work with, perhaps. And then, you know, to begin to sort of, you know, to trial this and roll it out with one of our field teams. And then we can think about what we need to do as an organization to invest in it further, to develop the solution more, but also to kind of bring it into the team more. Anything else, Kat?
No, yeah, I'm wishing I had questions for you, but you did too good a job. So just really thank you for all your hard work. I mean, the context in which you guys were doing this project was immensely challenging, and yeah, you worked really hard and it shows, and it was a pleasure to work with you. Yeah,
very much so. And yeah, so thank you to the three of you, but also thank you to Supply Frame and the Hackaday Prize, and you know, the Hackaday Prize team here, Giovanni and Magenta. You know, when you reached out talking about this initiative, like, I'm actually, you know, we get approached a lot by organizations that want to try and work with us, and sometimes, you know, that it can really almost draw resources out of the charity sector, having to engage with companies in, you know, sort of employee volunteer schemes and all of this. The way that you guys have run it has been really, really great, and made it so easy for us to work with you, and to, you know, to hopefully give the team here the best experience, but also to be able to share that with the wider Hackaday community now. So we've really appreciated the way you've done that, and, you know, thank you to your sponsors for making that possible as well. Yeah, really appreciate that, Giovanni and Magenta. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks to everyone. And I just want to say that I'm really proud of the team, how the different problems were approached, were tackled. I am really excited about a few things, a few of the possibilities. One of them that I hope, I think can have a big impact with Field Ready is the possibility of using the blockchain for creating QR codes, because during one of our long conversations, Antonio and I were thinking, well, yes, you create a QR code, but how do you prevent someone else from duplicating it at certain step of the process? And with tools such as this, and even when you're not connected to the web, even if you don't have access to Airtable right at the factory. So the challenge was multidimensional, and I think that can be a solution that scales and also that protects the user of a product if you have a digital signature, for each product or each batch. And also I want to mention that the iOS app, I was baffled by the level of detail that you, Tom, you put into it. When he was explaining it to me, he was like, oh, I changed this button so that, I don't know, it's closer to your thumb. And I'm like, oh, that's right. It's and so many things. That's just one UX part of it. But then the whole cycle, having interviews, it's not random. It looks beautiful. It's no accident. It works. So I'm really proud of all of you. Misha, just as Andrew said, all the research, all the hard work that you did, that enabled also other parts of the team to, do the rest of the work. So thank you guys. Thank you also, Andrew and Catherine, for having these conversations with the team and also facilitating with other team members so that we could grasp the challenge better. It was priceless. It was really super helpful. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to continue just echoing these sentiments, but of course we are close to time, so I'll also wrap it up quickly. But again, would like to echo, thank you to everyone for their time and dedication to this endeavor. This was, like we said, the first, the pilot of this program. And I know that I can speak on, like Gio just said, on behalf of Gio as well, like we're so proud and excited by the progress that has been made and by the potential for this program to continue. And we are, on behalf of Design Lab, Hackaday, and Supply Frame, really, committed to continuing to support the collaboration between everyone here and, future potential partnerships. So we're really excited to see where this goes and appreciate everyone's dedication also to the spirit of open source and keeping things democratic. And I really like the note about the potential for, this to really impact the sort of distributed quality control movement, maybe we could say, or inspire more progress to be made in that regard as well, which I think is integral to a lot of the networks and communities we work with through Hackaday and through open source hardware. So really appreciate everyone's time and energy into this. And again, one more thank you to the Field Ready team for your time. We know that you're already strapped for all the work you do for your organization. And so we know it's no small thing to ask for an hour here, an hour there, over and over again for 2 months, and even more when we were planning this initiative at the beginning of the year. So excited to see how far it's come and how much potential there is to continue to work together in the future. So on that note, I will say if anyone is interested in seeing more in depth the documentation and progress that the Field Ready team made, please check out the Hackaday IO page. You can search Field Ready Dream Team to see all of the beautiful work that Misha, Tom, and Antonio have put into this. And be sure to follow us for any future Hackaday updates. We still have 2 other final presentations by Conservation X Labs team and by Cal Earth team. that'll be coming up in the next few days. And so be sure to check those out and stay up to date on things for all things Design Lab, Hackaday, and Supply Frame through our social channels, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you again so much to everyone who joined us today. We're really excited to continue to see where this goes.